So welcome to the information session on Welcome Corps. This is the private sponsorship of refugees program. My name is Ann O'Brien, and I myself have served as a sponsor of a Syrian family. And for the last several years, I've supported other sponsors just like you in welcoming refugees. I'm joined by my colleague, Chris George, who you've already met. Chris is also the director of a local resettlement agency and has been doing that for 17 years. We both know from experience that groups of volunteers can do a great job of welcoming and resettling refugees. We're both members of the Welcome Corps team, and we're really pleased that we are here today to be able to talk to you about this exciting new service opportunity. As Chris mentioned, this session is for those who are American citizens or lawful permanent residents that are living in the United States, so that they can learn more about welcoming refugees through the Welcome Corps. In this session, we will talk about what the program is, refugees who will be supported through the program, and how you can get involved. You're going to hear from people like you who have sponsored, as well as from refugees who have been sponsored. We hope you will leave this session feeling more knowledgeable and empowered to join the Welcome Corps community by taking the next step to sponsor a refugee.
Thanks a lot, Ann, and hello to everyone. As Ann said, we're excited to have this opportunity to talk with you about Welcome Corps. This is a new service opportunity for Americans who are inspired to welcome refugees who are seeking freedom and safety. And as Ann said, we know from our own experience that welcoming refugees through sponsorship is not only a great benefit to the refugees, but it is also a benefit to our communities. It brings people together through shared acts of service. So as you know, Welcome Corps is a public-private partnership, and it's inspired by those things that America represents for so many people around the world, a beacon of hope and refuge. So what is this public-private partnership? Well, the Welcome Corps is a program of the United States Department of State. It's being managed in collaboration with the Department of Health and Human Services. But who's running the program, you might be wondering? Well, the Department of State has given funding to a consortium of nonprofit organizations that have expertise in refugee resettlement and protection. This is the group that's implementing the Welcome Corps program. The consortium is led by the Community Sponsorship Hub, and it includes Church World Service, Refugee Welcome Collective, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, IRIS, that's who Ann and I are with, the International Refugee Assistance Project, the International Rescue Committee, and Welcome.us. So what are our aims this first year? Well, Welcome Corps aims to equip and empower Americans across the country to welcome refugee newcomers and help them get off to a good start and to eventually thrive. And as a bonus, communities will be strengthened in the process. Who's going to support these groups of volunteers? Well, the Welcome Corps is also going to establish a network of experienced organizations to support the groups of volunteers. Our goal is to mobilize 10,000 Americans to welcome a total of 5,000 refugees in the first year of the program. You can be one of those 10,000.
Great. So a little bit about who will be sponsored through the program. Refugees are people outside of the United States who have been forced to flee their home countries due to persecution or fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. They are everyday people, just like all of us, professors, truck drivers, farmers, parents, and children, all of whom have been forced to leave everything behind in search of safety. Refugees live in camps or urban areas outside of their home countries. They wait for a chance to return home or integrate into the country they fled to, or just maybe permanently resettle in a third country like the United States. Refugees are referred to for resettlement to the United States when resettlement is deemed the best possible solution. This is when they can't return home, and it isn't safe or reasonable for them to stay in that second country. Before coming to the United States, all refugees including the refugees supported through the Welcome Corps, will go through a rigorous security vetting process and a health screening by the U.S. government. The vast majority of refugees welcomed to the United States are supported by nonprofit organizations known as resettlement agencies. The Welcome Corps will increase the United States capacity to welcome refugees by equipping everyday Americans, in addition to resettlement agencies, to directly participate in resettlement. In the first few months of the Welcome Corps program, refugees welcomed by sponsors will come from sub-Saharan Africa, where many have been waiting for years for the chance to start a new life in a community they can call home. Your group can provide that home. So one of the most important things that can learn from this program is that you're going to be able to change a life, and that life that also will be changed will include your own. We would now like for you to hear from Papi Sunga, a sponsored newcomer, and Mary Dunleavy, a sponsor located in Boston, to share more about their experiences.
Hi, everybody. My name is Papi Sunga, and I'm from Burundi. I'm the firstborn of family of 5, including my mom, my 2 brothers and sister. So after traveling from Burundi and then passed through Uganda, my family and I, we were finally able to safely resettle here in the United States. So we arrived at Boston Airport. I remember that was September in 2018. And we really received a warm welcome by Mary, and the rest of the community group was a really so like happiness for us to be here. So the community has helped us a lot of stuff, a lot of things. The community group has supported us in many ways, such as helping to secure an apartment and the food furnished and everything, and serving as a guide for all things, all the requirements upon arrival here in US. Also, they also help us like things like hospitals appointments, get us like better insurance, education, which is the most important. They help us with a lot of stuff like to know how to navigate transportation, to know how to use trains. They have been there for us for many things. I cannot say that all of them, but even right now we're still together, we're still working together, we become family. And the group has supported me, or I can also add on that, the group are supporting me and help me a lot. If I can start in saying from job 1 to another, getting better job, one job to another job. So like right now, I'm a truck driver. I have my CDL, all that because the community supports me going to school, graduate and get certificates, pass all the through until I get my CDL. Now I'm a truck driver. And then I really enjoy being with this community, enjoy with them because they support me with a lot of things. Like Paris, I may say all the occasion of celebration, taking us like in different places. They help me with a lot of hospitals, my siblings, especially my brothers and sisters. They have medical issues, but the community was there. The community group, Mary, we really thank you about that because you never abandon us. You're always there and you're still here for us. So they become our family. I'm very excited today. Me and Mary, we can share a little bit story about us tonight, about my family. Yeah, thank you.
Good job, Papi. Papi is family, as are his siblings and his mom, to the group that formed to welcome them over 4 years ago. I hadn't been involved with refugees before, but I found a note in our parish bulletin requesting that we consider finding a way, each of us, to support people like Poppy and his family. I realized that I had gotten a real estate license pretty late in my life, and I thought maybe I could put that to work to try to find apartments for arriving refugees, and I was successful in finding Poppy their first home. It was a bit of a challenge, but I tried dearly to convince both listing realtors and landlords that renting to a refugee family wouldn't be, refugees weren't in any way a risk to a landlord. And in fact, the tenants, the new refugees, were accompanied by an entire support group to make sure that things went smoothly. I don't think any other tenants for landlords come with the kind of support that refugees do. And Poppy's landlord and several since have acted as references to landlords who are considering rental. They've helped push them from being indecisive to getting on board in the process. So as I said earlier, that came to refugee work through my local parish. We work in collaboration with a resettlement agency called Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Boston. We were joined by 2 other faith groups, and since then a third, a Congregational, Episcopal, and a Unitarian church. But you didn't have to be a part of a faith group to be a volunteer. There were many volunteers who came to us independent of faith groups. We had civic organizations join us. We had Cub Scouts and women's organizations. We have families approach and say they wanted to be a team in helping to support refugees. It's been amazing watching Poppy and his family come to the US and gain independence. Part of that process included a small group of volunteers forming support for Poppy's younger brother, Fiston, and his mom when they first had to go to the local high school to try to see Fiston through graduation. The first meeting, the guidance department showed up and they asked Fiston who these other folks were. And Fiston pointed to us and said, "These are my aunts and uncles." That was the beginning of the bonding that helped us view Poppy and his family as our family. But you didn't have to have a lot of time. You don't have to have a lot of time to be a volunteer for refugees. You can go the long haul, or you can do a specific volunteer effort around a specific challenge. And about a year ago, we welcomed an Afghan family with 3 small children. And there was a blizzard scheduled, and we wanted snow gear. One of our volunteers got on the phone, reached out to her community, and within 4 hours, we gathered the snow gear and a sled donated by a little 9-year-old boy to that family so that the next day they could enjoy the first snow day in Boston. It was pretty amazing. But there's so many ways that folks can give to refugees. They often don't recognize how much they have to give. We have celebrated our family, Poppy's family, reaching independence and going full circle to joining our volunteer effort to welcome arriving refugees at this point. Poppy and his family have driven trucks and vans. They've gathered furniture that's been donated. They've delivered to apartments. They've assembled beds. They've made up the beds. They stocked the kitchen. But most importantly, they themselves welcomed the refugees. So they now have gone from being supported to being supporters. We couldn't ask for more.
So now that everyone on the call has heard from Poppy and Mary, I know you're eager to learn more about the program and getting started as sponsors yourselves. The Welcome Corps is going to be launched in 2 phases. The first phase began in January, and that is the matching phase. Matching connects Americans wanting to welcome with refugees who have already been approved for resettlement to the United States. The second phase, the identification phase, will launch in mid-2023. In the identification phase, Americans can identify a particular refugee or refugee family who is in need of protection and welcome. The refugee doesn't need to be related to anyone in the group. They will, however, need to be a refugee living outside their country of origin and meet other program criteria still to be set by the U.S. government. During the identification phase, the group's application to sponsor will include information about the refugee they wish to welcome. The application will serve as the refugee's referral for resettlement to the United States through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. Applications for the identification phase of the Welcome Corps are not currently being accepted. More information and program guidelines for that phase will be made available later this year. You can stay on top of the developments for that part of the program by joining the email list at welcomecorps.org. So, as we mentioned before, you don't have to know a refugee to be a sponsor. And that is what the first phase that's open now for applications of Welcome Corps is all about. And as you've heard from Mary and Poppy, since you don't have to know a refugee to welcome them, we wanted to show you just how deep those connections can become.
My friend, no, because it's my mom.
Boumtje is 4 months older than our son. The age is, of course, a factor, but he definitely brings out my maternal instinct. It's also that he needs help, and so I can provide it. I have experience reminding a young man to eat if he's not feeling so well. So here is the recipe de la recette. Comme je fais the pumpkin bread, j'ai ajouté the whole wheat flour.
Souvent, quand on me pose la question comment vous êtes arrivé ici, je dis by foot. Je ne savais pas où je partais, mais je savais que je dois partir. Je suis quitté du Cameroun, Nigeria, Niger, Mali, quand j'ai vu mon fils pour la dernière fois. Et ça, je regrette beaucoup. Je n'ai même pas eu le temps de lui dire que je suis en train de partir. Il s'est réveillé, il a demandé à sa maman, où mon père, je veux voir mon enfant, ma nièce, mes frères, ma mère. Ça fait 8 ans. 8 ans déjà. Je suis libre, mais je suis en prison. Je merci. Je suis entouré par de bonnes personnes.
It hurts every time I hear his story. It's another role that we play for him of a safe place to be sad and to understand the things that are not good, but still to have hope that they will get better. Okay, and we're going to chat. Yeah, ready. Yes. Excellent. Congratulations. We know that there's a lot of success in his future. It's a question of figuring out exactly how to help him get there and to be patient as we take one step at a time.
So that gives you a sense for how deep and how powerful the connections can become when you are matched with a refugee or refugee family who you don't yet know. And that is what the Welcome Corps is all about in this first phase, the matching phase. This will be managed by the Welcome Corps team and will take into consideration information about your group, such as the size of family you feel capable of supporting, and information about the refugee family, such as their family size, their languages spoken, and information about your community. The refugee family with whom you are matched will be told before they travel the name of your group and their final destination, and you will be there to greet them at the airport upon their arrival. I can tell you from my own sponsorship experience that the airport greeting is incredibly powerful. And with that powerful connection and deep, long relationship comes a lot of responsibilities. So in addition to greeting the refugee family at the airport, you are going to find and furnish their initial housing. You're going to help enroll the kids in school. You're going to support them in navigating public transportation. And these are tasks that most of you have done. How many of you have found apartments for yourself or for family members and furnished those apartments? How many of you have waited in line for government offices or navigated your way through frustrating government websites or argued with utility companies? How many of you have arranged medical appointments for yourselves and for your loved ones or enrolled children in school? Have you helped someone learn English or helped someone find a job or 5 or 10 jobs? You've done these things, you've done them well, you've learned how to do them again and again. You have this experience. And through the Welcome Corps, you can do these things with an arriving refugee newcomer, and at the same time, you become their friend. And newcomers need friends. So how do you apply? You have to have at least 5 citizens or lawful permanent residents over the age of 18 in your group. They need to live in or near the same community where the refugees will be resettled. Your group can be formed by friends, neighbors, work colleagues, faith group members, or book club members, any group of adults who together meet the requirements. This group approach to sponsorship will set you up for success and help you build and strengthen community. Every member of your group will need to complete a background check through the Welcome Corps website. At least one member of your group will need to take an online training. Although you will probably find that every member of your group could benefit from completing it, and we highly recommend that every member of your group completes the training so everybody's on the same page as to what's to be done. Your group will also need to complete a welcome plan. The welcome plan details how you're going to carry out your sponsorship responsibilities. It's a great piece of homework, and everybody in the group can divvy it up to work on it, and it forms the real pillar in the core of your application. If you need support in completing the welcome plan, you can sign up for an application support session that members of our team, Chris's and my team, and other members of the welcome team run. We highly recommend participating in an application support session. Finally, you're going to need to raise some funds. You're going to need to raise at least $2,375 in cash or in-kind contributions per refugee being welcomed. So, for example, if you commit to welcoming a family of 3, you will need to raise at least $7,125, and you'll have to demonstrate that 60% of that has been raised before you submit your application. You're going to use this money to secure and furnish initial housing. You're going to use it to provide for initial financial support until the refugees are able to access public benefits and until they can find their first job in the U.S. This amount of money, $2,375 per person, is the same amount that the U.S. government gives to resettlement agencies to support the refugees placed with them. However, depending on the cost of living in your community and the research that your group does in developing the welcome plan, you may well find that you need to raise more money than the minimum set by the U.S. government. And it's up to you to do that research and to figure out exactly how much you'll need to support the family and to get rolling in terms of a successful private sponsor group. So next, we're going to talk about the application screening. Your applications will be submitted through the Welcome Corps website and will be reviewed by trained Welcome Corps team members. Upon review, your application may either be approved and your group will be connected to an experienced organization, a private sponsorship group for ongoing support, or your application may need additional information. If that's the case, they're going to provide you feedback and then you get to resubmit it with additional information. If for any reason your application is denied, you'll be connected to application support. Next, Chris is going to tell you more about the support your group will receive and your next steps.
Great, thanks a lot, Ann. So you are going to get support throughout the process. Sponsorship is a joyful experience. It is rewarding, but it can also be challenging. And you'll be happy to know that we're not asking you to do it alone. A private sponsorship group is going to support you throughout the process. You're going to have access to application support and training, all kinds of resources, including checklists and guides. And most important, you're going to have an experienced organization guiding you, an organization like ours, a refugee resettlement agency. And this support organization is going to be available to answer your questions, to coach you through the process, send you reminders to complete reports and other paperwork. So when can you start? Well, you can start the process today. What are the next steps? Well, the application portal for Welcome Corps is open now. And here are some of the things that you can do to begin the application process. You can start to form a private sponsor group. Find at least four friends. I'm sure you'll find many more, neighbors or colleagues to join the group. They don't need to be experts in refugee resettlement. They just need to be willing to volunteer their time and to share their knowledge of the community. And as you're putting this group together, I have a suggestion, and this is based on experience. When you form your groups, I encourage you to go for diversity. Bring in people of all faiths or no formal faith. Invite people from across the political spectrum. Recruit volunteers of all ages and backgrounds and colors. I have seen it happen. Welcoming newcomers brings Americans together. So what else can you do? You can make a plan. Begin outlining how you will welcome refugees that you sponsor. You'll want to think about things like initial housing and essential furnishing, connection to community services like schooling and language classes and public benefits. Remember, the welcome plan is the heart of the Welcome Corps application, and it's going to help to guide your group in identifying resources in your community. What else can you do? Well, you can start fundraising. Remember, the private sponsorship group will need to fundraise $2,375 in cash or in-kind contributions for each sponsored refugee newcomer. You can begin now by setting up a fundraising account and reaching out to people in your community to encourage them to donate. This is an inspiring mission. You should not have trouble raising funds to welcome persecuted people from all over the world and help them resettle in your community. And we have a lot of fundraising tips. You can get them on the Welcome Corps website. If you want more information about navigating the application process, go to the Get Started page or sign up for an application support session. And if you want to be alerted about new resources or receive other updates on the program, I know there are a lot of people who are interested in that second phase, the identification phase of the program. You'll want to sign up at welcomecorps.org. That's how you'll get updates. That's how you'll know about new developments in the Welcome Corps program.
So now we want to answer some of the questions that have been coming in. Our first one, Chris, asks, how is the Welcome Corps different from sponsorship done by myself, Anne, and Mary, who is pictured with Poppy? So, Chris, how would you say that sponsorship is different? This is different with Welcome Corps.
Well, Anne, you and Mary were part of a group that was partnered with a local refugee resettlement agency. And in some places, it's called a co-sponsorship. Welcome Corps does not depend on a refugee resettlement agency. And that's a good thing because there are not refugee resettlement agencies in every community across the United States. So the Welcome Corps makes it easy for groups anywhere in the United States to take the lead in welcoming refugee families. It expands our nation's capacity by equipping and empowering everyday, ordinary, extraordinary Americans to take on this life-changing work.
And another question that gets commonly asked is, how long is the commitment to sponsorship? Well, the official period for sponsorship is 90 days. This is the period when the most tasks need to get done. The heavy lifting of getting Social Security cards, following up on an employment authorization document, enrolling the kids in school so that the kids can do what they need to do and the parents can focus on getting jobs. connecting the family to community benefits. And all of those things need to get done as soon as possible so that the family basically is on a road to having control of their own lives. However, you'll likely find that your mentorship of the family extends well beyond the 90 days. And that is a path that you and the family chart together, the things that they want to continue getting help with, or maybe they decide there's some things that they want to totally take on their own without the help of the group. And that's what you get to decide with them after the first 90 days. And as Mary and I can both tell you, the relationship between sponsors and refugee newcomers, they can last a lifetime. You'll just want to remember that one of the main goals of your getting involved in terms of sponsorship with refugee newcomers is to support the family in becoming self-reliant as quickly as possible after arrival. After the first point at which they fled their home country, they've lost control of their lives, and they want control of their own lives back as soon as possible. But that's going to mean you're guiding them in doing certain tasks rather than doing those tasks for them. So the official period of sponsorship is 90 days, but you navigate beyond that with the family in partnership with them. So another question, Chris, what immigration status will the refugees coming through Welcome Corps have?
Yeah, that's a good question. People coming through Welcome Corps will have refugee status, and that is an official U.S. immigration status. It's issued by the United States government, and people with refugee status are automatically authorized to work, and they're eligible for certain benefits and services. After 1 year, refugees can adjust their status to permanent resident or green card. And then 5 years after they've arrived, they can apply to become a citizen. They can naturalize. And it's an exciting thing to see someone that you've welcomed at the airport 5 years later, standing in a federal courthouse, taking an oath and becoming a United States citizen.
Chris is right. That's an amazing, amazing time when they become citizens, and they do get a path straight to citizenship as refugees. So another question, what information will we receive about the refugee with whom we have been matched before their arrival? That is a great question. So after you've been matched, you'll be provided with basic information about the family, including the names and birth dates of all the family members, the languages they speak, as well as some estimation of their level of English, their level of education, including if they've attended university, and the kind of jobs they've held. You're going to know their home country and the country that they are living in now. And while the information may sound limited to you, trust us that it's going to be enough to support you in preparing for their arrival. And once their flight has been booked, you're going to get that notification, including the arrival time, so that you can greet them at the local airport with signs of welcome and friendly faces.
That's great.
You all have asked some really good questions. We can take a look to see if there are any others in the chat. There's one individual that asked, can we sponsor more than one family? Chris, how would you answer that question?
Well, at this stage, we'll want you to do one at a time. But yes, if your group is large and has the resources and does a really great job with the first resettlement, then absolutely. We would be delighted if you sponsored a second family. So that's the answer to that. Are there any other questions in the chat?
Yeah, there's a really good one from Ann Jacobs that asks, my community is very rural and largely Caucasian. We're about an hour bus ride from the nearest city. And while anybody living here would need a driver's license, would this be okay communities to support a refugee family? We're a great small rural town, but we're worried that it could feel isolating. Well, that's a great question, Anne. But at the same time, you probably have an incredible amount of love and support to give a refugee family. So do your homework, look at the welcome plan and follow the guidance, come to our application support session and talk to others in town that may have lived in other places and see what they can contribute as far as being part of your sponsor group. And put together a plan through research and talking to other refugees and immigrants, maybe in the city that's an hour away, to figure out ways in which that you can include in your welcome plan to reduce that sense of isolation. The thing is that we know there are so many Americans that want to participate in this Welcome Corps. And if you can put together a good plan, then you might be matched with a family that came from a rural setting. And that would be a beautiful thing. But you're going to need to do the research and develop a way to minimize the risks that you're already identifying, and to have a way to work with those so that you put together a solid welcome plan in your application.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Welcome Corps as an organization is not going to rule out a community because it might be a bit isolated. Ann and I both have seen examples of refugees resettled in fairly rural communities without any refugees for miles around. And you know, the families have done well. As Ann said, the group members can sometimes, and often do, make up for, compensate for that sense of isolation that a family might feel.
Exactly. So there's a lot of questions in the chat about families coming from other countries like Ukraine or Afghanistan. For the first phase of this program, the matching phase of the Welcome Corps program, we're specifically focusing on families that are coming from sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm really glad that Alex and the others have asked this question. So we really are focusing for this first phase on those coming from sub-Saharan Africa. And while that's the focus for the first phase, the second phase, the identification phase, we'll look at other countries, but we don't have information about that phase right now. There are other programs out there that will support those that want to relocate from the Ukrainian communities, as well as some of the other countries. So another question that somebody had was all about the identification, the documentation that refugees will have. And that information is covered in detail at the application support sessions. So if you go to the Getting Started page of the Welcome Corps website and scroll down, there's a way to register for application support sessions. And those are run by our Welcome Corps team. And you want to attend one of those to find out all the details as to what you need to plan for in terms of what the refugees will have in terms of documentation when they come, and how you're going to support them in securing that. So that's it for this evening. But Chris, I think you had a few words to tell folks that they can to keep them motivated for moving to the next step.
Yeah, you know, this looks like a pretty motivated group. I don't think I have too much to say, except just to remind people, as satisfying and rewarding as this work is, it is not easy. Ann and I have been doing it for years. We would never say that it is, you know, a walk in the park. It's not easy, but I promise you, you can do it, and it will be very rewarding in the process. And if you talk to people who've resettled refugees, you know, volunteers like you, they'll tell you they have learned so much about other cultures. They've learned so much about themselves, their own country in the process, and it has been a terrific community project. Welcoming refugees, welcoming persecuted people from all over the world is our oldest and most noble national tradition. It's as American as apple pie. You'll want to tell people this as you're fundraising. The Statue of Liberty is the symbol, and Albert Einstein is a refugee. He's our poster child. Refugee resettlement is also one of our finest foreign policy programs, and it's happening literally in your own backyard, and you can be part of it. You can do more than write a check to support refugees or donate used furniture. You can roll up your sleeves and actually get involved in the process. Welcome Corps might remind you of another great American foreign policy program called Peace Corps, created in the 1960s. Well, I happen to have been a Peace Corps volunteer, and at times it was difficult, but I loved it. And we had a slogan back then for Peace Corps, It's the toughest job you'll ever love. And you know, that could easily apply to welcoming refugees. Welcome Corps is a new program. It's going to have an impact in the weeks ahead, and we hope for generations to come. Thank you for joining the movement. Good luck, and
hopefully we'll see all of you at an application support session. Thanks for doing this. You're going to love, love, love welcoming refugees.